safe to say. God give it, God take it away. It's the worldwide American way. I'm living.
What's going on, team? Proof here, and today I have my ARG Crazy 8 deck profile. If you want to check out how I did in the tournament itself, if you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to leave a link to it at the end of the video in the annotation. I'm also going to put the deck list down below if you want to just get the deck list and dip. But I encourage you to stick around and listen to my thought processes on some of the card choices I made along the way. And hopefully this doesn't go too terribly long, unlike some of my other deck profiles or my deck journey from before, because the deck is subject to change as I test more things out, get more comfortable with some stuff and less comfortable with other stuff, if that makes any sense. But hope you enjoy. This is my first time doing it this format where it's overhead. I generally have it panned out and you can see my entire play mat. So let me know what you think of this format versus the other format of my other deck profiles, because I want to do it to please you guys and whatever you feel is the best presentation. So with that, let's get into it with my forerunner, Mecha Trainer number 1. He is Mecha's king, as I like to say. He helps us search out heal triggers, our PGs, Frog Raider, things like that. He's the best starter in spikes, in my opinion. People may differ on that, but I feel he is the best one overall, and I can't see myself playing anything different. As for some of the other grade zeros, we got to finish out with the other 3 Mecha Trainer to help us pull pieces together, notably our heal triggers, our Linuses along the way. He also comes in handy by pulling out Frog Raider and Eliza if you have it, or PG if you need it, if you already have all your other pieces together. It's crazy how efficient it is to have the extra Mecha Trainers in the deck, because I never thought about doing it before playing this deck. And after playing this deck, I can't see myself going back to not playing multiple Mecha Trainers, just because how efficient it is and how good it is to have that flexibility in my hand at all times. And this is where it's going to get a little funky, because as I said before, my deck that I played was much different than what I showcased. So I have 4 Liar Lips and 3 Silence Joker. I played 7 crit in my deck. Back when I tested it before the tournament, I played 8 crit, 2 draw. I'm sorry, 8 draw, 2 stand, 2 crit, and the 4 heals. And I got completely obliterated by people that were playing rushy style decks at in my local scene. So I went back and I reevaluated and I thought about what I could do differently. And the one thing I came to in my testing was playing crit triggers, more crit triggers, to help get myself more 10k shields on the defensive side, and then being able to push extra damage on the offensive side. And I was wavering before the tournament between playing 2 Silence Joker or playing the 3rd one and then adding another one to the draw triggers. I eventually settled on having the 3 Silence Joker, just because having that emergency unflip definitely comes in handy in some situations, and I wanted to give myself a better chance of doing it over the draw trigger. Even though I know how great draw triggers are in this deck, I figured that having the extra crit, the 10k, and the unflipping or the countercharging utility came through in the end. And the beauty of Liar Lips is that she's kind of like a flexible draw trigger, in that if I have her in my hand with Rising Nova and I'm trying to dig harder for pieces, I can push her into the soul, draw a card, give myself another chance at checking for a heal trigger, especially before I search with Rising Nova, because it could be floating on the top there, and just gets another card out the deck. So when I triple drive, I give myself another chance to potentially check one on the triple drive itself. And on my Hellhard 8 turn, she has an incredible interaction with Hellhard 8, in that I can call her out on her own or in front of Frog Raider, and I can attack with her and get power to Frog Raider or to another unit, and then I can shove her into the soul, draw X amount of cards and recoup those cards, and then search out with Rising Nova himself while not losing anything in hand, and then putting plus 10, 20,000 power onto my Frog Raider, which is incredible. And it's an interaction that I utilized and tested before, but during the tournament, it came through a couple times in that I had 1 or 2 Lyre Lips when I went into my Hellhard 8 turn. And it's funny, poking my opponent for a 31k crit trigger and then shoving it into the soul and searching out some of my other charge units along the way. So I really enjoyed it. I definitely see myself at least sticking with Lyre Lips for now. We'll see how things go on in the future with testing, but this is how I played it over the weekend, and I definitely liked it. And then 5 draw triggers. I know, as I mentioned before, playing more is generally what people see when it comes to Crazy 8 because of the need to pull pieces together. But considering that you only need to get 2 out of 7 cards when it comes to Mecha Trainer or Linus, I felt comfortable enough playing the 5 draw triggers, 5 or 6, depending on how I went with Silence Joker, to be able to use those to get me through the game. Because more times than not, I would often find myself drawing into the draw trigger versus checking the draw trigger. So then that's when it becomes just a 5k shield for filtering purposes, usually just convert into another card. But with this, I felt it was a good balance of checking it and when I needed it and not drawing it when I would otherwise not want to draw it. And it definitely paid dividends, especially having that 1 extra one in there. It came through at times. And then our little boy, JV Linus, playing for him always because you need to, because you need to be able to get to your Hellhard 8 as reliably and comfortably as possible. There's not much more to say about it. It's an incredible card. Thank you, Bushy Road, for getting us an extra way to soul charge, put cards into our soul. And then as for the grade 1s, for Milly, it's the age-old question of Milly versus Alma, and I will almost always pick Milly if I'm playing a Rise of Nova deck because her charge ability, or her having charge, comes more in handy than the counter charge. The deck itself isn't really counter blast heavy enough to where I felt I'd ever needed Alma. And as you can tell in my trigger lineup, I didn't have Devil Watch either because I didn't really come into a time where I felt I needed to have Devil Watch over the course of testing, and I didn't want to have the need to check a draw or check the stand trigger when I would otherwise want to check something else. And that kind of goes along the same lines as this, in that the deck is super counterblast heavy the way that I played it. So I always felt better with the Milly over the Alma because I can use her as an emergency charge unit on Miracle Ace, Hellhard 8, those types of turns versus the counter charge with Alma. And then this was a last minute change, but playing for Acrobat Verdi, I would usually play 3, but I cut one of my grade 2s to play the 4th one because I wanted to maximize my chances of not having to use Mecha Trainer to search out Acrobat if I was caught with Hive Maker in hand. And I know you don't need to have Rise of Nova for your first stride if you're aiming for Hellhard 8, if you have the pieces to go for it, but I would rather not have to re-ride going into my Hellhard 8 turn because that takes another card away from 8 potential 2 cards, well, 1 total because you still have to stride. So you take a card away from 8, which takes a card away from attacking, which could ultimately hurt you over the course of the game, potentially, and you don't want to put yourself in those positions. So I played the 4th Acrobat, and I'm glad I did. I can't recall a time off the top of my head where I always had it in my hand to use as search fodder because Rise of Nova usually showed up on time, but it was nice to have that extra stride fodder in the deck so that way I wouldn't have to use Hive Maker in my hand and I could charge it with Supernova and put it to the bottom of the deck to save it for my Hellhard 8 turn. I don't know how it's going to change in the future, but for now I'm definitely enjoying having 4 of them in here. Then we got 3 Frog Raider, the backbone of our big play turns. He is your primary target for Hellhard 8 boost if you can manage it. And he's your principal target for your Miracle Ace. If you play Miracle Ace, I play Miracle Ace. I'm never not gonna play Miracle Ace. But he is arguably our most important grade 1 for our, well, definitely our most important grade for our offensive turns, but arguably the most important one overall. And definitely want to play him in at least 3 in my opinion. And rounding out the grade 1s, we have 2 Eliza. She is good because she has the cool interaction with Hellhard 8, as I showcased in one of the videos, because if you pass her the Hellhard 8 skill and you attack with her, you can shove her into the deck for her Hellhard 8 skill and then resolve her primary skill, because she doesn't need to stick around to do it because she's at the end of the battle that she boosted. Or at the end of the battle she boosted, her effect goes on to, her auto goes on standby, so you resolve it after you resolve the 8 one because you can still trigger it, or it still has to resolve. And she's really good for your Picaro turns for Triple Tiger, and I wanted to keep that option open just in case the Hellhard 8 plan fell through, and that's why she stuck around as a 2 of. We'll see what the future holds for her, because she also is a charge unit for emergency purposes, so we'll see how things come out in the future, but for now she's going to stick around as at least a 2 of. And then as for the grade 2s, we got 4 of my boy, my favorite grade 2, Mayhem Tiger. He is your go-to finisher for all your turns pretty much. He's great for forcing damage in, make your opponent drain cards when they otherwise wouldn't want to. If we ever have a way of having something like Moon Maker that when it's put to the bottom, give one of your rear guards a skill of on hit, you can pass it to Tiger. Ideas for the future Bushiroad. But he's great for your finishing potential, putting him in front of Frog Raider on your Hellhard 8 turns, being able to attack for like 61,000 power with a ham-fisted amount of soul right there is really good. And I like to play 4 just because I have an amazing ability to draw them, and I don't always have the opportunity to put them back to the bottom because I prioritize other things when it comes to charging something with Supernova. So I like to play 4 just so that way I can call out in the future if I need to. And it's a great decoy as well, because people, once you show it to them, they respect how dangerous he is. And then 3 Cobalt Impulse. He is your part of your engine for your Hellhard 8 turn. So many times I still had 2 or 3 left in the deck, and I would call it out with Hellhard 8, and I would put my opponent in a position where they had to guard 51,000 plus power on hit draw card. So it's kind of like Neo Nectar with the Rani Maryuka combo, but it's really good for those instances where your opponent is pressured to guard it, otherwise you just keep cycling through your deck and not losing out on your Hellhard 8 cards. That makes any sense. I think I said that wrong. He's good for fueling your hand just a little bit more so you can keep your chain going. And I usually, if he's in my hand, I try to charge him and put him back to the bottom via Supernova. That way he's in my deck for the future. Or I like to call him out if he's in my deck just to make sure he's safely on the bottom so I don't damage check him or drive check him or something like that. But he might go up to 4 in the future depending on how other cards flesh out in the future, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. But for now, 3 is a really solid number. We got 2 10K Panthers. Excuse me. I played 2 because it used to be 3 before I cut 1 for Acrobat. And he's good for what you would think he was for, was to be preventing some early rushes if I'm going first, if I'm riding the grade 2 first. And usually he's just a nice solid call to have just to put pressure on one of my opponent's rear guards or something if I'm aiming to charge something else with Supernova. And it's handy little fodder piece as well, just in the future. But I mainly played it for riding it on grade 2 so I didn't have to ride something else. And then I could use other cards in the meantime to play around it and poke at other things along the way. And the last card in my grade 2s is Pokkur. I know there was Link Joker kind of floats around in my area, and I wanted to be prepared for it, and so I went ahead and got myself a couple Pokkur. One ended up making the deck because it's really easy to get a Cray face up, and I don't think you're going to need more than one, because if you time it right, you just need to have the one go off and then keep your combo going against the Link Joker players. And I didn't have a need for it because I didn't run into Link Joker in the tournament, but I like to have it just in case. I know he's going to get cut for Connell when Connell comes out, because Connell is that good and does functionally the same thing as Pokkur does. So for now, he's going to hold his spot. Maybe, we'll see, but for now he's holding his spot as a one-of when I played it over the weekend. And then as for the grade 3s, our boy, 4 of the Rising Nova. You already know what he does. I don't really need to explain why he's here and what he does, but that's why. Because he's the boy. And finally, we have 3 Hive Maker to round out the grade 3s in the main deck. And Hive Maker is really good for all the things he was good for in the Rising Miracle and Super Miracle decks, in that he could, on your Miracle Ace turn, he could be used for his counterblast costs to call something from your hand out to the field. And similarly, on your Hellhard 8 turn, you can use his charged ability to A, pass power to Frog Raider, and then B, you tuck him to the bottom of your deck and use his charge ability to then call something that's trapped in your hand that you would otherwise wish was in your deck. You call it out to the field, and then you can pretty much get the equivalent of your Hellhard 8 ability while still having a charge unit in your deck to call out later with Hive Maker himself. And that's generally why I like to try to have one in my deck for the big turn always, just to make sure that I have the ability to use it if I need to, if I have the counterblast afforded to me. So I tested out a little bit with Dobe, but the utility that you get from Hive Maker so far outweighs the power you get from Dobe, and I will almost always pick utility over power when it comes to this, especially because you have Hellhard 8 and Miracle Ace just to feed power to your stuff anyhow. And as for the strides, got 4 Rising Supernova. I play 4 because A, I like to flip one up with the first Supernova when I stride into it, so that way I can put something in charge, usually just to get it back to the bottom of the deck. Over the weekend, I would almost always forego using Rising Nova's stride ability, so that way I could save the counterblast and put a charge unit in my hand to the bottom of the deck, because it was almost the equivalency of that, of using his stride ability, just not getting the power for it. And I like to have the other 2 around because it becomes G-assist fodder, because the G-zone is so tight, because you need to make use of all your G-guards if you want to aim for the Hellhard 8 play sometimes. And because if it comes down to it, I can go second stride into Supernova to try and close out the game with his plus 10,000 power boost. So it didn't come into play this weekend, but it has come into play in testing. So I like to keep my options open for that. Then, next up, we got 2 Miracle Ace for the same reason as I mentioned before, just to keep my options open. Because if I, for some reason, lose 2 heal triggers, I don't feel comfortable with the game going that long into 3rd stride, I could still use Miracle Ace because I have an abundant ways to gather soul. And generally, I only need 2 counterblasts to do it, especially against decks I can't interact with my fielded cards. So I like to have the Miracle Ace around just in case, and you only need 2 since he's a Persona flip. And then I have 2 Picaro. You really only need 1, but you have a flex spot in the deck to use, so I decided to put it to Picaro. This this slot here, the extra slot, could be something like Tiger Centurion, which is something that I poked around in my head just for mass return of charge units back to the deck, or something else, another G-Guard perhaps if you felt you need it. But I know even without the Double Watch, there's a chance I could use 2 Picaro just from healing naturally and stuff like that. So I kept it around just in case. It can become GSS fodder along with another Supernova in a pinch if you need to, because there was one time where the 3rd Supernova, the flip, came out in handy because I didn't have enough to use Picaro, for example. And we got 1 Sebreeze, and being able to use Sebreeze because you don't really need Rise and Stride skill in this deck comes in handy sometimes for getting yourself to GB8, because as you're going to see with my G-Zone, or the rest of the G-Zone, being able to use Sebreeze plus 3 heal triggers into all your Linuses will get you to GB8 as long as your opponent attacks more than once. So something to keep in mind for the future if you're playing this deck, how do I word it? Something to keep in mind for the future playing this deck is to know how you need to sequence your G-Guards to get yourself to GB8 effectively. That's what I wanted to say. And that's why you're going to see in a little bit why I have my G-Guards set up the way they do. And the namesake, our other boy, the Machine, the Ogre. He's an Ogre? Wow. I thought he was a Bioroid or something, or a Gearoid, or whatever they're called in this. But we have Temerarious, Cataclysmic Rogue, Hellhard 8, and he came through so hard over the weekend, and nobody was ready for it, and we were able to take advantage of that, minus the 1 game that I lost, but due to my own misplay, which I talked about. He finished all of my games for me, as far as I can remember. I don't think I won a game with any other stride, and he's amazing. Thank you, Bushroad, again for such an amazing card. And I can't wait to see what the future holds when we get some further support. And then as for my G-Guards, got 3 Interference King of Interference, whatever you want to call them, Terrible Linus. And I played 3 because for the situation that I talked about with Sebreeze, because the only way to get to GB8 off of a Sebreeze or a stride that cannot flip is by having 3 Linuses to be used back to back to back. And why'd I say if they attack? Because you can always use 3 Linuses on one attack. So disregard what I said about your opponent need to attack twice if you Sebreeze, because they can just attack Vanguard only, and then you can just dump all 3 of your Linuses and then go straight into Hellhard 8 from there. So that's why I played 3. I can't see myself going back away from 3 because I know that particular play is available to us. So yeah, and he's a really cool card. I love his artwork. I got 1 Max just for the off chance that I might need that 25k shield. It came into play against the Dimensional Police player that I played because I was in a situation, if he checked a heal or checked the trigger and 2 grade 3s, he would have been able to punch through an Aery if I played Aery. So that's why I needed the Max in there. And it comes in handy for those times, and I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. It's kind of like an old saying of mine that I live by. And so yeah, keep it as a 1 just in case. And 1 area like I talked about, you're rarely going to use her for guarding, but once again, I'd rather have her because sometimes your opponent attacks for 28 to 30,000 power and just enough to scrape over Agleam, which is the last G-Guard, which I'm going to put here next to it. Sometimes your opponent have enough just to scrape by Agleam so you can use her without having to use a Linus. And if you go into Supernova, you have 1 non-flipping G-Guard that you can use. So you have your option of these 3 here. I used to have Dismal in here, but since I don't have Misery in the deck, I don't have much of a need to keep Dismal around. And Dimension Police and Attack and Rear Guards isn't something that I generally try to play into with Commander Laurel on the board. So I don't need to have Dismal in there to protect that particular unit for now. We'll see what the future holds, but that's generally how I feel about it as of now. And that's the deck. So hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm sure I might get questions about the trigger lineup, and hopefully I explained it well enough to why I went that particular route over the quote-unquote traditional route of 8+ draw triggers. So hope you enjoyed again. Look out for more, and that'll do it. So until next time, guys, peace. Be easy.